Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our first interview with the guest of the day. I am joined by the Executive Director of Women Advocates, Research and Documentation Center, Abiola Akiyode-Afolabi, for discussion on the Adamawa governorship rerun fiasco. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, madam.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Now, let's begin with the conduct of the rerun election in Adamawa State. How will you describe it and how INEC handled the matter?
Well, I think more than any other time in Nigeria, we have an election whereby
if you can hear me, madam.
Also in Enugu and other places where, people had turned the election to a battlefield. And that was exactly the kind of tension that we saw in Adamawa, the fear in the minds of people, especially with the supplementary election, which I do believe that, we should not get our election to that level where people are psychologically affected, people are afraid of their lives. And, some people actually also lost their lives, during election. A professor was beaten and all of that was, beaten by mob and all of that. So I think by now, Nigeria, since 1999, by this 2023, we should have a better election framework that would not, bring us to that, kind of situation. So what we saw in Adamawa was quite embarrassing. The role that was played by critical actors, whether political parties, whether the INEC, really was actually below expectation in terms of what would have been expected to see, in an election in 2023.
Right. Now, some Nigerians have called for the arrest and prosecution of the resident electoral commissioner, Hudu Yunusari. What does the law say about this kind of infraction?
Well, he is expected to be prosecuted because what he has done is to threaten the mandate of the people. And he did it, in a manner that, in a very brazen manner, goes ahead to do what he knows that, he should not do. And that could have led to loss of lives and a whole lot of things. And I think that INEC really has a lot of blame here. If you recall, some times ago, the Sahara reporter had actually shown that the rec was actually not, was biased. I think that was.
All right, tonight in the program, we have Madam Abiola Akiyode-Afolabi, the Executive Director, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center. Okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So if we look at that, and you would expect that INEC should.
All right, and tonight we're discussing the Adamawa governorship rerun fiasco, and we're also bringing to you breaking news reaching us. The President Buhari has approved the suspension of the resident electoral commissioner in Adamawa State, Yunusa Hari. If you can hear. All right, Madam Abiola, if you can hear me now. Reports reaching us says that President Buhari has approved the suspension of the resident electoral commissioner in Adamawa State. Now, I would like you to react to that. And also, what do you think can be done to avert a recurrence of this shameful act by the REC?
Well, I think it's the right decision for the REC to be suspended, but I also feel that it should be prosecuted. We need presidents to deter other REC from doing what he has done. This is not the first time that would have REC, usurping the power of returning officers, in the country. So if he has done that, I think that this can be used as a model, to deter other people, from doing this kind of thing. And it also raises a lot of questions with respect to the kind of people that we are appointing. The REC is not expected to be in any way political, or partisan or biased. They're supposed to be an independent umpire, but in this kind of situation, we don't see that come out. So I think it's also important for us to begin to look at, so what are the modes of appointments of RECs in this country? Who should be a REC, so that we don't then have the situation whereby they embarrass everyone and also subjugate the democracy that a lot of people, had worked for. And so I believe that beyond just suspending him, steps should be taken so that we also don't think that the government in power also has one form of support or the other for what has happened. So they must show that the REC should be held accountable in a manner that will serve as deterrence, to others. I think mere suspicion is not enough. Steps should be taken so that the REC can also be prosecuted for what he has done.
All right, so because INEC officials have often been accused of circumventing its own guidelines and of compromising the credibility of our electoral process, how do we get the INEC to be more accountable?
Well, there are a lot of things that we need to do to make INEC better. People have talked about unbundling INEC. I think there seems to be a lot of things that INEC has dipped its hand into, from voter education to printing of ballot papers and all of that. And Adamawa election actually showed that there's a need for us to put our eye on what is happening within INEC. If you recall, before the Adamawa election, there were accusations about the fact that Binani was Binani's company, was given a contract, to produce, electoral results and all of that. So if you look at all that, there's a need for us to have INEC that concentrates on election and not to be the one, doing all these other things. So there's a need to unbundle INEC, so that we can have a much more effective INEC. And also the procedure of appointment of INEC, we need to reopen it. We need to make it much more independent. In such in other countries, I think in other countries, one or two African countries, you have to apply to become a REC, and there are procedures. So it's not just it's not just by appointment, because by appointment also it's not sure, of the extent of independence of such, a person that has been also appointed. So I feel that we need to look at the appointments, of the REC, in the coming period, so that we can have much more independent REC, that will not subjugate democracy and also embarrass, the country in the way the Adamawa REC has done. So it was obvious that he has a purpose. It was obvious that he was ready to do anything to ensure that he achieved that purpose, which he had, before the election.
All right, so if I get you clearly, what you're advising is that everyone who wants to become a REC or a national commissioner must apply and go through a rigorous exercise before appointments.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes, they must go through rigorous exercise. That's what they're doing in other countries. Yeah. It's not just by appointments, and of course, we know what obtains, in this country when, it's by appointment. So it could also be, and we have had like allegations like that where, some REC had been proposed by Mr. President, and I think even recently, and the REC later on became the NDDC, who would have become the REC, later on became the board member of the NDDC. So the point is that, so it's obvious from, if we look at it from 1999 to date, that RECs that are, appointed not in a manner that is not biased. So we need a more transparent way, to be able to appoint reps so that people can also rely on the elections. So people can also know that their votes will count. So I believe this is very important in terms of, moving forward, our democracy in Nigeria. If we don't do this, we will continue going right around the circle. So if you look at for every election, there are allegations like this. So meaning that there's something that we're not doing right with respect to having the electoral system that's the monitoring body, that is independent and that can actually have the trust of the people. So, and that's why you find it very difficult to find Nigerians, trusting the electoral monitoring body. And that's why I said we need to find an independent way, beyond just appointment by Mr. President and the National Assembly. There should be other stages. It should be open. It should be much more open for us to have a very independent electoral commissioners.
All right, so still talking about the way forward. For INEC now, what do you think the electoral umpire can do to cleanse itself of rogue elements like what we had in Adamawa states?
The INEC had responded to a lot of allegations, but I don't think that's enough. Unfortunately, I also don't think that Nigerians believe that, even when INEC comes back to say, oh, we didn't do it, or we were not corrupt, and all of that. So I think that it's a system issue, and it's also very systemic. So we need to deal with it in a very holistic manner. And in that regard, it has to do with, also investigating, structures and seeing whether we can put, a stronger structure. And, the umpire, it's like the Lord and all on his own, except if, they go to court, to challenge some of the things, that they are doing. So we need to look at the powers of INEC and see how we restructure it in such a way that it will be able to work for Nigeria. But the way it is, it looks like INEC is not working for us. If you look at the 2023 election, there's been a lot of allegations here and there. And one would have thought that with the introduction of the technology, Bibles and all of that, maybe things would have gotten better. But we're not seeing that happening, whether in Adamawa or in Lagos or elsewhere. And so that in itself shows that we still rely so much on human beings, to be able to finalize, our election. And we thought that the INEC should have made that, technology work for people. So, but from what we are seeing, we are still very far away from that.
All right. So before we move on to other issues, let me quickly get your assessment of the entire supplementary election.
Well, it's still like what we saw, and I think it's just like a one-way election. In Kebbi State, we saw, what happened, and in some other places where they had, other elections. So people seems to be at this point, except for places like Adamawa, where, there's a lot of attention, on that election. Some of the places that we saw quite a number of people not, wanting to participate in the election. There's that voter apathy, because people felt that what happened on March 18 do not reflect, their votes. So the supplementary election, came just like that, and well, the winners are won and they have been declared. But I'm not really sure whether we have actually addressed the major, challenge, around our election. I think the trust is still there. It's still a major issue. Nigerians can't trust a system that is not working for them. So we need to sit down and look at that system that can work for us, in a very, appropriate manner, an effective manner. But as we speak today, the election is really not working for Nigerians the way it is expected.
All right, so you have talked about trust issue being a big factor. How do you think we can ensure this going forward?
Well, the securing the trust of the people. If you look at 2023 elections, I think at the initial stage, Nigerians were hopeful because of the information that they have with how technology is going to work. So people felt that the technology would not be mismanaged, and if you see as of today, people are still downloading to see, who won the election and all of that. So what that also shows to us that there's a potential in technology, and that technology can help, a lot in terms of, bringing trust, to Nigerians, and their elections. So we need to probably invest more in that and also provide enough information for people so that people can understand, the limits of technology. Because I think that one of the things that didn't really work well in this last election is also the fact that, the information is not there, the awareness is not there about what is the limit of, technology in this election. So people thought that it was going to run through all the process, through technology. But at a point in time, the information also shows that, we can only benefit, from technology to a particular extent and not all through the electoral process. So I think that there's a need for transparency. Transparency is very important. A lot of money going into elections, about 400 billion or thereabout, was used for this, 4 billion or thereabout was used for this election. And so it's important that if we're and you can imagine how poverty is ravaging the country and what that amount of money can do, to change the life of people, in the country. But because election is important, such amount of money had gone into it. So then it becomes very important, for us as a country to ensure that such amount of money is used and is used effectively. So it's so and if INEC, it's the umpire that people are looking up to, I think we should see that as a priority in terms of reforms, in terms of restructuring. So it looks like the Electoral Act, despite that it has been reviewed and it has been, improved upon, it looks like we still have more, to do on the Electoral Act, to be able to place the procedures clearly so that the election can work for Nigerians. As we speak, Nigerians still feel that their votes are not counting, and that's really, a major issue. So the question of trust is important. Effective investment in the electoral process in such a manner, that the electoral process will work for people. As it is today, I don't think that the investment is really showing. One would have expected a lot of awareness, and that's why I also would insist on unbundling INEC in such a manner that we could have people who are working on awareness creation and continue. Civic education should not stop, so we don't want to wait until 2027 when we will then start talking about, electoral procedures and all of that. So it should be like an everyday thing. Nigeria is a big country, and so one would expect that there should be more investment in awareness so that people can, and then a lot needs to be done in terms of transparency, accountability. Information should be on the table for Nigerians to know and to see so that they can trust the system. If we don't do that, it might be very difficult for us to be able to get the kind of democracy that we think we are all looking forward to.
All right. It's also very important for us to talk about the off-season governorship elections coming up in states like Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo State. What do you think INEC needs to do differently to achieve more credible elections?
I think the first thing is information. Information is very important. I think INEC needs to give that clear information, to Nigerians about what their expectation on election day, should be. The political parties have not been very, they have not actually been good contributors to the electoral process. So it's important. So it's not only about INEC. So there are also issues around the political parties. I think there's a need for a lot of restructuring of political parties. The political parties in Nigeria see election as a do-or-die affair. So going to the other elections, it becomes very important also to deal with that. At different points in time, people that signed peace accord, they've signed, non-violence accord, vote no fight and all of that. But you see on election day that do we see that really, materialize? Election is on sale. There is a lot of corrupt practices. Recently, the EFCC has been coming out, to participate in the election, but we can't really see fundamentally, what the EFCC is doing around the election. So it's very important, to look at the overall electoral system beyond just what INEC can do, to look at the question of civic education, for people, providing the right information as people go into the coming election, to be able to diffuse the issue of, trusting of trust, and other issues around INEC, to also clear here around what technology can do, in the coming election. And the fact that there are smaller elections, we have seen elections in Osun State, we have seen elections in Ondo, in the last period, in Edo State, in the last period, and, INEC was able to probably manage that, better, than the entire national election. So one is hoping that because they are smaller elections, INEC should be able to do better. But, I think we need to actually speak to the entire space, of politicians, of voters, of religious leaders. For example, in the last election, what we saw was a lot of, religious insinuation. People had turned the church or the mosque to a political party. And I think some of these issues are condemnable. If you also look at the social media also, there's been a lot of misinformation, and people have also used that also as a way of either bullying people and all of that. There has also been the issue of tribalism and all of that, in the election. So I think that these are very terrible development. And so for someone who had worked on election before, this is quite really afraid, of the future of democracy in this country if we don't begin to address that. Because those issues are actually, raising a lot of issues on the efficiency and the efficacy of what we have and how what we have can actually deliver, the kind of democracy that we have. And we need democracy to be able to grow as a country. We need democracy to be able to deal with our economy. So if we don't trust a system that is going to bring that forward, then it becomes very important. Then it becomes very unfortunate,
Right.
for the country. So.
Okay, because you've talked about trust, you've mentioned some other issues like voter apathy, you've talked about religious persuasion, tribalism, but there is this factor, vote buying. Do you think you can defeat this deep-rooted menace given the hunger in the land?
Well, it's been a major issue, and I go back to political parties because that has been the tool that the political party has been using to intimidate, voters, and also to buy voters so they are also taking advantage of the situation of poverty in the land. But people also over time have realized, and I think 2023 election also tried to a large extent to demystify the role of money in elections. So we see also people getting involved, ensuring that they do mandate protection, despite the fact that they were not paid, to do that. So we can see a lot of that developing. So while money had played a great role in the election, one could also see that people are also coming to the reality that, if you collect 2,000 naira today, it might not really be what is going to address the issue of bad roads in your community, or that is going to affect, the high school fees for your children. And, also it can only put food on your table just for a short period of time, or cannot be sustainable. And I think that we need to inch more on that, so that people can understand that, voting is a democratic right that needs to be exercised without any form of coercion or intimidation. But it's a major issue, and I think it's something that we need to focus on to ensure that we don't monetize the election. But we have a problem, generally, because even picking tickets, it's quite expensive, and that's why I say we can't continue to monetize the election. If we continue to monetize the election, it's going to exclude a lot of people, and that's what we keep saying. That people cannot afford even to participate, in the election, and that's what we're talking now of people within political parties. So it's gradually becoming something that the election is gradually becoming what can some class of people can afford to do, and while others so we need to demonetize right from even picking the candidates form, so that people can know that election is not about money, that there are there are other things that the election can bring, to the people. But I think for this 2023 election, particularly the young people, came out and they were actually not, talking about being bought. So meaning that the future might be brighter than what we think.
All right, so still talking about vote buying and also financial inducement. How well do you think this manifested in the just concluded elections?
Well, we saw a lot of that, even if it's not, as obvious as we used to see it before. Probably also because of the cash crisis that we had, during that, period. So the fund is not just there, but it didn't stop people from transferring money, to people. So that's affected the cash crisis. Actually affected, the apparent, transfer of money, to people during that, period. But I believe that this is one of the major challenge, affecting our electoral process, and we need to do something about it. So creating awareness alone, might not be a problem. I think we need to contextualize it within our larger problem. There's a lot of poverty in the land, and people must be able to find a linkage between poverty and integrity of election, because if we don't deal with that, we probably will not be able to come out of that poverty. So it's very important to, do a lot of conversation around this, sensitization of the people, to know that they have to, at a point in time, ensure that they save the country, from the imminent danger that, monetization of the electoral process is going to take us to. So it's a major issue that we need to deal with. If you look at the electoral laws, it actually outlawed things like that, but unfortunately people are not even aware. So they know what they're doing is wrong, but they don't know, what the law can do about it. And the fact that, people are being caught at, different in elections before now, and people didn't see anything happen to them. I know that the EFCC was out, so we didn't get a report about how many people were arrested for, holding money that they're not supposed to have during the election and all of that. So I think that the government also need to show to the people, that some of these conducts are not acceptable. They are bad, by ensuring that, when people are caught, people are also aware that they are prosecuted and something happens to them. But the impunity that goes around, some of these issues are often, allow this kind of issue to continue, without stopping, because people know that nobody can arrest them, so let me just collect the money and nothing will happen to me. So I think we need to do more in terms of changing that orientation, and government also need to do more to ensure that they deal with the issue and deal with people who exchange money, during the election.
All right, then. I must say a very thank you to you, madam, for finding time to join us tonight. I've been speaking with the Executive Director of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, Abiola Akiyode-Afolabi. Thank you very much, madam. We should let you go now. Thank you very much.